Shout out to everyone who came by and watched Ortho Thugs episode 7. Perhaps, I think we could all agree, the most epic, legendary episode to date, don't you think? Charlie Kirk is just, what a monster. Pat Fussy, $5. Thank you, number one. Yeah, thank you for leading the charge, sir. That's how you do it. All right. Now, anybody who's an atheist, all of you guys, you're always yapping with your thumbs, okay? I challenge any evolution proponent, whether you're an atheist or not, to try to defend evolution. Try it. I dare you. All right, let's see the problems here. Okay? Observed a fossil or a collection of fossil, right? So the observation is fossils, plural, okay? Is the question what causes fossils, plural?
What?
I'm asking you, if you found fossils, what's the observation?
Really quick, we don't, so the fossil record was used to build support for evolution, but then there are fossils that were predicted to be out there that we then found. So the fossils are not just observations, and then we form a theory around the observations.
Excuse me.
The fossils are the evidence that was predicted as well.
Stop for a second. You just said we use fossils to support the theory. You didn't even get to the theory because you need an observation to get to the theory first. So you're starting with the theory, and then you're finding fossils. You have to do it the proper scientific way, which is start with an observation. You don't assume the theory because you didn't get there yet. You have to start with the observation, not tie an observation to your assumed theory. Do you understand this, guys? Like it's actually very simple once you properly categorize these things. You can't look at an observation and do a thing and then interpret the thing with the theory. The theory is the product of the manipulation. This is what evolution is. In a nutshell, you're looking at it. In a nutshell, it's going and finding things and interpreting the things through the assumed theory. That's what they think a scientific theory is. The irony is that the Christian who does maybe a poor argumentation of looking at nature and looking at the trees, they call it look at the trees, right? This is the meme. This is the meme mockery of Christians. They look at the trees and say, well, I see my intuition and everything about systems and workability and functionality and teleology and purpose leads me to believe that there's a designer to this. And they interpret the external world through the thing that they're proving, which is God created it, okay? Now, the atheist hates this when the Christian does this, and yet they do exactly that. They're doing exactly that format. They interpret it through their assumed, what they call a theory. Total pseudoscience. Kenneth, the step, $10. Hey, what about Adam was made with built-in time, just like Earth and the universe? Hey, what about Adam was made? I'm trying to understand the question. What about Adam was made with built-in time, just like Earth? Well, I would say the creation of Adam. Well, let's say like from a Christian perspective, the creation of the world, including creatures and man and all of its operations, is itself outside of the purview or the paradigm of naturalism. So if you're asking like, is Adam built through the same miraculous, powerful mechanism, if you want to call it that the Earth is? Maybe, yeah. I couldn't pretend to try to equate or even make analogous things that are created in the world that we call created, like manipulation. Because the Mormon view is that all of matter existed already, and then man and everything in it was just a manipulation of the existing Plato. And so we don't hold that view, Kenneth, if I understood your question correctly, though. So Steve's $5. Hey, Jimbob, my brother is inquiring any traditional church, but it still accepts ecumenism. How do I evangelize to him without selling him false doctrine? Tell him to participate in, just try to get him into orthodoxy, because the catechism, even though orthodoxy is subject in many Greek churches to ecumenism, through the learning process, you'll see the problems of ecumenism, and it's on you, in a sense, to find priests and parishes who aren't simping to ecumenism. But there's a philosophical route to that as well. I just don't know what kind of person your brother is. Some people respond well to philosophical destruction of the view of ecumenism. But sometimes it's really just, it comes down to participating in the true church, and the notions of ecumenism, you realize that they don't really apply. Because even ecumenism, if you pressed on it, the goal would be for those who you're trying to include under the umbrella to have good relations with all of these things. You're still trying ultimately to pull them into orthodoxy. You're not trying to make them the same thing. And anyone who says they're the same thing, they're likely stepping off a soft ecumenist lily pad into a very destructive heretical position, like explicitly heretical position. So push them closer to orthodoxy. I think that's a better solution than anything. Get them practicing. Are you related to Peter Dinklage? Not that I know of, no. Yeah. I could be his slightly taller brother, but I'm not sure. All right, let's continue with this. This is not science, this is pseudoscience. So again, if you're going to claim that you found fossils, is there something specific about the fossils you're calling your observation?
Yeah, the characteristics of the fossils. So, for example, Archaeopteryx
was
predicted to have existed before its fossil was ever found. It should have intermediate traits between theropod dinosaurs and birds, and it does.
Okay, hold on. Again, you're telling a story about the observation. In science, you start with an observation, just purely, and describe it, okay? So what are you purely observing with fossils, please? Very clearly.
The anatomical structure is the most obvious thing you can observe with fossils. And then by observing the anatomical structure...
I observed the theory into existence.
Of modern living birds and extinct theropod dinosaurs, the prediction that an intermediate fossil form should exist was made, and then it was discovered.
Hold on. We're not talking about predictions. We're starting with...
I wonder what these fossils were, because he said they found fossils and then they predicted what they're going to evolve to, I guess. And then they found new fossils which fit the prediction. But I mean, even so, does that mean like the new fossils they found, like how did they examine that the new fossils they found that they predicted matched that they were descendants or lineage of those previous fossils? Like how did they go about testing that?
Yeah, that's a good question, Cool V1C. The way their methodology, if you want to know, is them predicting finding similar phenotypical anatomical fossils is their methodology. That's actually it. They when you ask them this, they're confused. Well, okay, you found another fossil that's like this other thing. How did you determine that one was from the other? They said, because we predicted finding the fossil. I mean, the kind of, like, you have to be raised in some sort of, like, already completely deteriorated scientific academic climate to not understand how that's so ass backwards. It doesn't make any sense. Kenneth, $5, like when people say, how was Adam made directly to a man, and instead of billions of years of universe, everything was made at the same time by God? Well, Kenneth, I think you're pointing to, there are many people who call themselves Christians who are trying to make sense of creation through a naturalistic paradigm. It's a mistake to do that. You have to bite the bullet as a Christian. Revelation. Supra-rational phenomena. Miracles. Not bound or explained No matter how many times Ben Shapiro says, "Well, I believe that the God split the sea, but it was a strong east wind. He actually used naturalistic processes to split the sea." Buy some gold. Appreciate your push on evolution. Yeah, thank you. It's fun. It's quite fun for me. I'm good at it. They also put new fossils into old categories. Yeah, and they have mismatched fossils. Like, you know, they always talk about the Archaeopteryx. The Archaeopteryx. They think like this one thing, right? They have one thing that fits their assumptions. And you go, well, there's other things that are, according to your age system, are much older that shouldn't be older. It throws the whole thing into a loop, dude. Rachel, hey Rachel, $10. It's wild these materialist scientist worshippers can't see that they're not starting from the right place or thinking about this from a correct paradigm. Seems impossible to get through to some of them. Yeah, Rachel, that's why I think I'm always reminded by other Orthodox people, my priest, my fellow parishioners, when we talk about some of this stuff, that ultimately it does come down to some spiritual issue. Now, we can't argue that way with them because they don't even believe spirits exist, or they can't even tell you a mind exists. But when we're confused at their lack of logic or rational thinking or consistency, and we're all confused, we're like, I don't get it. I just told you, like, you know, a logical defeater to your view. And they're all, it's something else. It's like something we can't, like, we need another route to get to them. Like, they're unreachable. So who's the fool to keep engaging? Well, I am. I'm the fool. Steelborn, $10. Hello to all Jortlandia. This super chat hasn't evolved for 250 million years. Thanks for the raid, Rob. Thanks, Rob. JB, can you check your Discord DMs when you get a chance if you want to still debate soy pilled? Oh, yeah. Is that on Schmortion? Yeah, the reason I'm hesitant on that, Steelborn, is I'm actually not totally well-versed and ready for that topic. I could be if I work on it. It's just not a priority. My focus is like metaethics, which abortion, we could take that approach and do quite well. So I'm interested. I have to get comfortable with the material. I'm not comfortable with the material. David Bentley Hart, the Universalist heretic, in the chat. Who's better, Plato or Aristotle? Debate me, by the way. I don't care about either of them. They're both partly right about things, and then they're both wrong about things. So I don't base my worldview on two philosophers, right? My worldview is based on Orthodox Christianity. So David Bentley Hart, repent. Your Universalist views are disgusting. You should be humiliated in public and tomatoes thrown at your head. Okay? Glad we got that settled.
I would have liked to have known that.
The scientific method. This should be very easy for you. Now focus.
It is.
The observation is
the
fossil exists, and it shows the phenotype, the anatomy of a certain bird-like creature. And you're comparing that to an observation you have presently with an anatomical, similar bird-like creature, correct? That's the observation.
No, I said theropod dinosaurs and
he said a different name, you guys.
And modern birds. So what?
Unbelievable. Rachel, $5. Thank you. Even if you don't get through to people, you are debating. I think it gets to some people. Yeah, through to people watching. Yeah, it is worth it. I agree with that. Sometimes I get a little bit down about the whole world of it, and I'm like, but then I realize I do get messages and stuff in a fair volume where they're like, I'm so, thanks for doing this. I'm understanding some of these arguments against it. So it's not for the dumbass we're talking to. I'm always reminded of that. Thank you. Steelborn, $5. My argument is going to be about his position to make ought claims. Yeah, we can wreck him on all of that then. Yeah, because it doesn't, like when you get into the minutia of like, well, when the biological stuff, it's kind of good, like especially for people listening to learn, like there's no example of a human being that didn't start at conception. Like the necessary moment for a human being to exist, the very beginning, there's no way around this, is conception. That's the very beginning. And they're like, no, it begins when they're born and the doctor's holding it. No, it's not. That means that a human being could skip conception. If conception isn't a necessary starting point for all human beings, you wouldn't need conception to start a human being. You could start it arbitrarily somewhere else. Kenneth, a step, $5. Yes, no evolution, only adaptation. Adam created 6,000 years ago in the earth and the universe. People still think they can see millions of years. Well, they see an imaginary millions of years. It's wild. Remember that moment with what's-his-face that I just debated? He talked about Luca, which is like an acronym for something else, an abbreviation for some term, the earliest like life form or whatever. And he's like, then there's Luca. And I was like, what's Luca? And he's like, oh, it's the first ever single organism that everything springs from. And you go, and it showed up 60 million years or whatever he said. Some ridiculous arbitrary number. And I go, what is it? Well, we don't know what it is. We don't know what it is. We don't know I don't know what I'm talking about. Stillborn, $5. I've always been passionate about this topic. Now I'm radicalized because I'm going to be a dad. Oh, yeah. Good. Yeah, being a dad. Boy, is that a billow to the fire. Congratulations, by the way.
Go ahead.
I'm just saying, in clear language, you're discovering a fossil and you're looking at its anatomy. Lucy? No, not even Lucy. Lucy is the human-like thing they appeal to. They go back further. It's Luca. Let's put my truther hat on. Lucy, Lucifer, Luca. And where's my truther music? You're comparing it to modern anatomy, right? In short, that's your observation.
Yes, because what evolution tells us is that the organisms of today are the descendants of organisms of the past.
Stop going to the theory. Stop it. Just right to the theory.
I'm telling you.
Right to the theory. He explains the data by the theory. That's not how science works. You don't explain the data. You have to establish the data through a mechanism called the experiment, and then you can establish a theory. You can't look at the observation and just explain it through your assumed theory that's going to be at the end of it.
The scientific steps.
You can't interpret the observation with the theory because the theory is at the tail end of the theory. You have to pretend you don't know what the theory is.
I'm talking Archaeopteryx was discovered only a few years after On the Origin of Species was published.
Who cares about the story?
Evolution was very much hypothetical at the time, and I'm telling you what happened when it was very hypothetical. Before genetics, before the modern synthesis, before any of that
stuff. Stop your story. Stop the filibustering storytelling. I don't care about your stories. Observation. There is a fossil that has an anatomy. There is a current
Peterson losing it already.
That has similar anatomy, right? All I'm asking you is that the observation?
That's one of the observations, yeah.
Okay, let's start with that.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was really hard. Observation. Old thing has traits, typical traits, anatomy. Current thing has similar things, right? The next question in the scientific method is, what causes the similarity, right? That's your question?
I never asked a question. What are you talking about?
I know, because you didn't do the scientific method. Thank you. So
he didn't say that you were asking a question. He was just saying, well, if you observe these things, then the question you would ask is what caused it. That's what he was saying, that's the question that you would ask.
So the next question in the scientific... Now, was that purposeful from Peterson, or did he have just like a dumb moment, right? What do you guys think? Did he just purposely do that, or is it a dumb moment? Method, Peterson, is you start with the observation, and now you're asking a question about the observation in nature, the similarities between these two things. So isn't the question what causes the similarities between these things?
Yeah, and then that would be genetics, which was discovered farther down the road.
Hold on a second. If the question is what causes this phenomenon you call similarity in traits or anatomy, right? Your hypothesis is now this. What causes similarity, correct?
A hypothesis is not a question.
Dude. The hypothesis is positing X causes Y, correct? Hypothesis is a kind of question. You're bringing in an independent variable and saying, does this cause this phenomenon? That's a question. That's a question. Your hypothesis is this maybe does cause the phenomenon. It could be a statement or a question. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Okay, so what is X in this scientific method? We got to the observation, we asked the question, what causes the similarities, right? You have fossils, and that's your observation, right? A fossil and the current bird that you're referring to. Hypothesis is X causes Y. So what is X?
You could say common descent. You could also...
Common descent. Common descent is the thing you're already assuming. What causes this thing to look like this thing? Oh, common descent. Okay, cool. How do you introduce that, buddy?
So say genetics.
Question big.
No, it's
Isn't
not.
common descent to the theory itself?
It's an implication of the theory, yes, but we would look at...
See how he does that? So you can't...
We would look at any...
Stop.
Go ahead.
Common descent is a post-diction basically story of what is occurring. We're asking for something that's X that you could introduce to produce similarities between these two things, right? The phenomenon is similarities in phenotype, right? So now we're asking a question, there's a bigger problem here that comes up in these debates is that when they draw out similarities between phenotype, this is not genotype, this is phenotype. We already know that things with similar phenotype, anatomy, structure, can have completely unrelated genotype. Not the same. This is a big problem for them. Now, they run with it until someone brings it up and they go, wait, isn't it the case that there's things that have similar phenotype but not genotype? They go, yeah. Okay, so why are you finding old things that look like new things and assuming that they're related genetically if we already know that phenotypical similarity doesn't actually assume genotypical similarity? You know what does though? You know what does? Function. Things that function the same way. Well, that's a problem because if function is one of the explanations for similarity in anatomy and phenotype, if that's the case, when you say function to an evolution proponent, that is the beginning of the end of their entire position. Why? Because there's no way to argue or use the term function or dysfunction, this came up with my last debate, without assuming some sort of purpose. There's no way to talk about function without purpose. It's impossible. They have to then, like I did, I think, quite well with the last guy, is they have to then explain function from an evolutionary view. But the problem is the evolutionary view holds that random mutation, total accidental copies of genetic information that produce totally accidental effects, produce highly effective, functional, hyper-specific things like a liver and a heart and a brain and a bone and a joint and a butthole. How do you accidentally produce a butthole? It's a happy accident. Handsome Cat, Jimbob's still seething about Eric Peterson curb stomping. You're not even watching, dude. This is literally, he is George Floyd, and I am the cop right now. This is a neck moment. Causes neck similarities in phenotype, and you've skipped to common descent, which you can't introduce into an experiment. You can't introduce common descent and remove it. This is not science.
What?
I'm confused. I have to introduce independent variables to then demonstrate some sort of inductive probability that it's the cause of the phenomenon? Why are you asking me to do science, Jimbob? I'm very confused.
We do evolutionary experiments all the time.
We do evolutionary experiment. Dude, the question, I'm cross-examining whether or not you even know what an experiment is, dude. I didn't ask if you think we do evolutionary experiments.
I don't think we do. We do.
I'm trying to... I don't care what you think we do right now.
I
We're
don't
dealing
think
with
that
one
we
observation.
do. We do. Like I can cite you some.
I don't care if we do right now. We're supposed to be doing one right now, dude. And the observation is similarity in phenotype between an old thing and a new thing. Question: what causes the similarity?
Common descent.
Hypothesis: common descent. So is common descent something you can introduce into an experiment?
Digging up fossils really isn't an experiment, but that doesn't make it not scientific.
That's not what I asked.
Doesn't answer my question. This is cross-examination.
I'm pointing out the red herring of
a red herring. You said X causes Y. Okay, is it correct that you're saying X equals common descent, Y is similarity between these two things?
I'd have to write that down to keep track of it. But what I'm telling you is that the reason the Archaeopteryx transitional form exists is because theropod dinosaurs are the common ancestor of Archaeopteryx and modern.
The question, dude.
It's not.
Notice how they don't answer these questions, right? If we took any other example and we thought, hey, there's this phenomenon in nature and biology. What causes it? It's totally normal for me, the scientist in this case, to go, do we have something we can introduce to demonstrate whether it is or it's not causing the phenomenon? That's science. This is basic shit, dude. This is like 5th grade. Introduce it. I just simply this is all it takes, you guys, to have these people thrown into their own tornado of scientific morass, dogmatic morass. You just ask them a simple question. Can you introduce common descent? That's a narrative, by the way. Common descent, that's a metaphysical categorization of the past. You can't introduce a narrative categorization of the past into an experiment. And this is where they go. This is where they go. You can't do it. It's such a kill shot for them. You know what it does is it forces them into a pseudoscientific philosophy about what happened and reasons they believe the philosophy. That's it. Science? None. Philosophy? I'm actually willing to debate the philosophy of evolution. You know what I mean? I would at least like an honest atheist to come forward who holds an evolutionary view, who admits that it's like at least 60% philosophical or more, maybe fully, honestly.
Not begging the question.
Listen, I'm going to ask you
is
you need
evolution
to answer my
true?
Now.
This is the kind of evidence we would predict.
No.
It was found.
I'm not asking for
supporting evidence of X.
Stop
I'm not
it.
asking for
Peterson,
evidence.
stop. This is my cross-examination.
I know.
Observation. We'll do this real slow. Observation. There's an old thing that shares anatomy with a current thing. I ask a question. What causes the similarity? Your hypothesis is
that common descent causes
it.
And then we found the evidence that confirms
Hold
it.
on.
Keep the interrupting to minimum, please.
Stop it. Okay.
It's like talking to a child. It's like telling my kid to brush her teeth.
You posit that a thing called
talk back.
Common descent is the independent variable that causes similar anatomy, correct?
There's no independent variable.
There's no independent variable. Do you guys need to hear any more? There's no independent variable. Contradiction. Common descent causes similarity. There's no independent variable. And look, dude, handsome cat, all of these spurgs. Do you understand what just happened here? This is an embarrassment. This is absurd. You can't say the two statements, P. Common descent causes similarities, and then not P. Common descent isn't an independent variable, right? You can't say those two things. That's what you're assuming is the cause, bro. This is terrible. This is a
question.
And your question is flawed.
I wish I caught that then. I was a little riled up. I was trying to keep him on track, but I wish I caught that. He said there's no independent variable. Next time I will. Matt Dillahunky, what's going on, Matt Dillahunky, talks down to believers in Creator while huffing his own Reddit fumes. Doesn't use a scientific method, but somehow it's still science. Yeah, it's still science. You can do science without doing science, basically.
flawed, which is why I'm informing you that doing paleontology doesn't have independent variables.
Doing paleontology doesn't have independent variables. Thank you.
Because it's not an experiment.
Therefore, it's not science.
That's complete bullshit.
You can see it, dude. Does a scientific?
There are all kinds of things.
I'm asking the questions.
I'm answering your question.
No, you're not. Listen, you just said it. You conceded the debate right now. Why?
No, I didn't.
This is how.
You fucking moron.
Oh, he called me a fucking moron.
It doesn't. You don't. No.
Can you develop a scientific theory without an experiment?
Absolutely.
You can. Okay, so what's the need? Why use experiments then if you could just develop theories without experiments?
Because they help.
They help, but you're not needed, right? So everybody who's ever developed a scientific theory through experiment, they actually didn't need the experiment. They could have just used Peterson, his view of science, which is just imagining that you're right about something. And if it comports to a prediction, you're right about something. And it's the creationists, it's the creation tards who are the anti-science people. It's a total opposite, dude. They help? Okay,
yeah,
so I can just develop any theory without an experiment, and you just believe it because I don't have an experiment to be the arbiter of two competing hypotheses.
Boom.
There's more.
Over.
You literally.
If you don't need an experiment, then you don't have any arbitration between two competing hypotheses. It's simple.
Literally started. You were actually doing this earlier. There's other kinds of evidence, like just mere observations, than experimental evidence, but that doesn't mean that it can't be part of science.
Observations is the first step, dude. I didn't say it's not.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean,
it's unbelievable.
Yeah, Jimbob's right there. It's just like, well, wait a minute. So, see, the thing that bugs me is that these people, and like, you know, I'm assuming, I don't know, Planet Peterson is you know, a lefty or whatnot. I'm going to assume that he's
not a lefty. He does go against lefties, so he's kind of in the middle. Just so you guys know.
At most, at best, he's at least center left. But the thing is that like we come up with like our own theories and stuff all the time, right? And they always like yell at us and like, well, that's not proven. You have to look at the science. The scientists haven't proven it yet. Yeah. They always appeal to the scientist's theory, but then when Planet Peterson comes here and says, well, you don't have to have an experiment in order to confirm the theory or not, it's like,
it's actually worse than that. It's that one question is whether or not a scientific theory needs to be at the tail end of an experiment. The answer is yes. But the second entailment of that is that you couldn't arbitrate between a competing hypothesis. So if you have two hypotheses about what causes a phenomenon, right? If you don't have an experiment, you don't have a way of determining which of the hypotheses or whether none of the hypotheses are correct. Zyle, $5. When we grabbing a beer, Jimbob, we can chat about our shared disdain for Minar. I like grabbing beers if you're in the neighborhood. Evidence doesn't equal validity anyway. Yeah, evidence isn't even the thing. Honestly, like, you just look at observations and you're like, well, I think this. And you're like, where's the evidence? You're like, I just observed it. And you're like, what? Pseudoscience. You know what I need? I need a pseudoscience stream deck. That's what I need. Pseudoscience with a big echo. Matt Dillamonkey says, I don't measure intelligence by knowledge or application, only by how progressive, anti-Christian, and smug you are. That makes sense for Matt Dillahunty.
Like, well then, like, why the hell are you always like why are like people like always yelling at us and like talking condescendingly to us? Like if we're morons, if that's the case. And why are you guys always appealing to some kind of authority with the scientists then?
Part of science. I said observation is the first step. Now tell me, how do you arbitrate between two competing viable hypotheses without an experiment?
You can look for evidence like let's say I think that George Washington was actually a woman. And somebody else says, I think he was a man.
That's not a natural science phenomenon, dude. This is so insane. I think the apple is a tomato.
We go and dig up his bones, and we find...
It's not even a scientific theory, dude. Not a scientific theory. We're talking scientific theory.
We're talking about how do you delineate information.
We're not talking about what things are. Science can't be done. Listen, all you atheist retards. You can't do science without first assuming the philosophy of science, which then goes into the assumption of what things are. That means their identity over time, even taxonomy. That's not science. If I say, is there a tree outside, and I go outside and look for a tree and find one, that's not an experiment. That's an observation. There's a tree outside. This is wild, dude. This is public education. He's a teacher. He was a teacher. This is a teacher.
Absent an experiment. It can be
It's like equivalent to like a female pastor.
Done. I just demonstrated to you that it can be done.
I did not ask if you can gather information. I asked you, can you develop a rigorous scientific theory without the scientific method? Again, I'll read my opener here. Scientific theory is a likely explanation of what causes an observable natural phenomenon based on an experiment using the scientific method. The scientific method goes as such: observation, ask a question, what causes Y? Posit that X causes Y. Introduce X, remove X. Repeat, conclusion, develop a scientific theory. Now, I've demonstrated that for your quote theory of evolution, when I ask you what's the observation, you say there's this anatomy we found. It looks like this other anatomy we have. Look at the similarities. I ask you, interesting, what causes the similarities? You say common descent. I ask you, can you introduce common descent and remove it? You say no. I say it's not a scientific theory. You say experiments are not necessary for scientific theory. Let's take it down a notch here. Let's say scurvy.
Can I address that or not?
No. So scurvy. So scurvy is a symptom, right? A set of symptoms. Scurvy.
I would call it a condition. The symptoms. Yeah. Sure.
Okay, great. It's a condition. Is it fair in the scientific method inside of natural science to ask the question, what causes scurvy?
Yeah, that's fine.
Scurvy.
Okay. Could I arbitrate between two hypotheses of what causes scurvy without an experiment?
It wouldn't necessarily have to be a controlled experiment. You could literally just read ship logs and see, wait a minute, those people on that ship, they took like not freeze dried, but like preserved.
That's part of the observation, by the way.
Vegetable, like fermented cabbage, fermented foods, like that was a way to because they didn't have refrigerators, so they could get their dose of vitamin C. Nobody knows what vitamin C is back then, but anyways, you could literally.
Now, what I really regret about this is I actually didn't know during this debate that there was an update about scurvy since maybe years ago. And it's just a colloquial sort of accepted thing to say, well, scurvy, it's caused by lack of vitamin C. I wish I had known this. Why? In the future, you can use the vitamin C and scurvy relation correlate and get the opponent to agree that we've established that the lack of vitamin C causes scurvy. Now, once they bite down on that, I'm giving away my goods right now, but once they bite down on that, you go, aha! Using the scientific method, we've been able to alter that and say, no, it's actually not that. It's actually not the lack of vitamin C. It's something else. I didn't know that during this debate. So in the future, you can use that.
Literally just look at the historical record and you could say, hey, wait a minute, these people were, they had that kind of food, and then this other group of people, all they ate were like meat preservatives and crackers and things like that. They got scurvy, and then they didn't. That would be supporting evidence. Now, ideally, you would go on to do experiments that help validate.
Hold on, I understand, Peterson. Hold on.
Yep.
What you just said is that's an observation, and that's the moment you're actually forming a hypothesis, right? Right.
Yeah, but I mean, even with that though, it's like that just sounds more like a correlation might not be causation type of deal.
Exactly.
So you could still be wrong, even if you're noticing all these ships have this and these ships have that, and this one's getting scurvy and this one doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
It could still be it could still be wrong.
Yeah, the reason is Peterson is looking at one ship and the ship logs and looking at what they have, some of the variables they have and the other ship doesn't have. Well, no, now you have to introduce each of those variables independently to really get down to what's causing this phenomenon. You can't just group all the variables together and say, well, it's this group of variables. That's not science. That's just an assumption. I have sushi. Happy feast day. Nice, Justin. Hall, Long Nate, thank you, $10. Holy hell, Planet Peterson is even dumber than I first suspected. My homeschool 16-year-old nephew with severe autism, sorry, the chat's moving, could dog walk him through and he would still deny the truth of the scientific method. Right. $10 from FB, thank you so much. So let's say you say men can have babies, but you can have breakers, test, tubes, microscope, and you're wearing a lab coat. That's basically, yes, that's pretty much it. That's pretty much it.
Like, even though it might have this thing and it might have these traits, there might be some underlying trait that we're not even observing yet, that we don't even know about, that could be causing the scurvy.
Yep.
Looks
and
like
that cool, if you're watching this cool V1C, it actually turned out to be the case. We thought it was this very simple view of a lack of vitamin C, and it turned out to be something else that was more rigorous. How did it become rigorous? An experiment. It wasn't rigor. You didn't get rigor to the cause of scurvy from just imagining it. Extanglia, $5. Hi, my name is Extanglia. Hello, Extanglia.
Looks like one ship had oranges and vitamin C and a way to preserve their nutrients, and that ship didn't get scurvy, but this other ship is missing something. That's a question, and I would argue, and I think you would agree, that that's actually where you introduce your hypothesis.
Sure.
Okay, so I'm asking you, again, if you have two competing hypotheses, right? Let's say someone else says that's not the case. Is there any way other than an experiment actually arbitrate between the two competing hypotheses?
Yes, because hundreds and hundreds and actually thousands of ships have sailed, and you could look at the records of all of them. You're not producing the data yourself. You're not doing the experiment.
That's an observation.
But if you say yes, but these are observations that confirm what your hypothesis is.
No, dude. Do you see how backwards these people are? Did you just hear what came out of this guy's mouth? Well, science is you start with an observation, you make a hypothesis, but you could also just observe a lot of things to confirm your hypothesis. What? Excuse me?
If, like, this is literally how studying the past works. Now we can
studying the past,
study evolution
oh my gosh,
in the present, but
oh my gosh,
and
dude.
Like, this is a little bit of a tangent, but
honestly, how do the fellow atheists who are rigorous with science look at this and not like go, okay, this is a red flag. This is something. I hate to agree with a creation tard, especially someone as smug and arrogant as Jimbob. But I'm sorry. He's right. This is all correlation. Science and natural science, the reason that scientific theories are valuable is they produce, they verify or validate a theory to a high degree, and they also null. There's null, which is just as valuable. It turns out X doesn't cause this, right? And if that's all useless, by the way, because you can just use correlation. You don't need any causal systems. You don't need a causal relationship between X and Y. You just correlative.
Other scientific theories like the Big Bang, we don't recreate the Big Bang. We do recreate certain conditions to like know some things about the first moments of the Big Bang, but literally all of it is just observations. We did the math.
It's just data.
We said
dude.
there should be these predictable things out there in nature that we see, and we found them.
Hold on. Can false assumptions accurately predict phenomenon?
Is it logically
Seems
possible?
reasonable that could
That's the end of everything you just said, dude. How does he not understand this?
happen.
Okay, if two different models or hypotheses are saying, look, I'm observing the data and you're observing the data, I think this is causing the phenomenon that's predictable. They both have a predictable element to them. One is true and one's false, or maybe neither are true, right? I'm asking you, If someone's looking at data of thousands of ships, I don't care if it's 1 million ships, and it looks correlative that the ships that have food preservation technology and vitamin C don't get scurvy, and the ones that don't, they do get scurvy. That's an observation. That's data. I'm asking a different question. When we introduce a hypothesis of what causes the phenomenon, is there any other way to arbitrate between two competing hypotheses than an experiment?
Did he just fall
The answer
asleep?
was,
I already
yeah, more
told you.
data. No, you just said more data. So
Yeah.
no, the answer is no, because I just told you two people can have the same wealth of data and posit different hypotheses about the cause of the
See that?
phenomenon, and
You see
one
that?
could be wrong or both can be wrong. The question is, how do you determine in natural science who's got the correct hypotheses other than at an experiment?
See that? Did you understand? Like Peterson, these people are so dogmatically indoctrinated where they think if you just pour over the data, by the way, in philosophy of science, data doesn't actually tell you anything. It doesn't tell you how to interpret the data. That's just raw data. Doesn't tell you how to interpret the data. Data doesn't have its own self-evident view of itself, okay? They basically do sola scriptura, but for data. That's what an atheist empiricist is. That's what a Peterson is. He's like a Protestant, but the text is data. And he's like, well, it's self-evident what it says. No, it's not. A data mail. That's funny. Data mail. Walter Mellon, $5. Using his model, can't you conclude that rain dances produce rain? Yes, that's right. Rain dances produce rain. I think rain dances produce rain. There is a number of people, for whatever reason, right before it rains, it's millions of people. It just happens to be the case that they dance shortly before it rains. And that's the data. The data told me, Peterson, that rain dances produce rain. Why? There just happened to be a high level of correlative analysis and data that shows a bunch of rain dances. Just, there you go. Can you produce a paper? I don't need to. Rain dances, bro. Haven't you been to one?
I literally answered this question for you.
With more,
Do I have any debates? Well, I tried to get Mark Reed on Tomato, because, it's a bigger platform and it gets rowdy and it's fun. But he's like loyal to breakfast tacos. It's just breakfast tacos. No offense. Your channels, if it's going to be between a bigger channel who has, everybody show up on camera, right? And it's specifically debate and it's moderated like that. If it's between that platform and yours, which is a visual mess, I'm going to go with the more established one, dude.
for data.
What is it that experiments give us? More data.
Also, I'm not saying
the
no,
data
hold on.
that is
No,
produced
stop.
by an
This is sneaky.
experiment.
This is sneaky.
This is such a sneaky move.
Answering your question, the data that is produced from the experiment can absolutely exist in other cases
right.
that have already occurred. So there's no meaningful difference.
There's no meaningful difference between data pre-experiment. That's what he just said. How can you be an atheist and even like Peterson, right? Like his channel or whatever. How can you reconcile what he just said? There's no difference between pre-experiment data and the data that the experiment produces.
Experiments are great because you can control
Hold on a
things.
second. I want you all to listen to what he just said. The data post-experiment is no different than the data pre-experiment.
That's not at all what I said.
You literally just said that. Watch.
Is no different than the data pre-experiment.
Hold on.
What is it that experiments give us for
Watch.
you?
With more data.
What is it that experiments give us? More data.
Yeah, more data. Is it a different set of data?
Also, I'm not saying
the data that is produced
stop.
by an
This is sneaky.
experiment.
This is sneaky.
I'm
This is sneaky.
answering
Listen to
your
what he says.
question. The data that is produced from the experiment can absolutely exist in other cases
right.
that have already occurred. So there's no meaningful difference.
There's no meaningful difference. He just said that. You guys all heard it. There's no meaningful difference. The same data produced by the experiment could exist in other places that aren't the experiment. That's what he said. He said there's no meaningful difference. And watch how quickly. This is why it's so frustrating when you deal with them. There are many dishonest people who call themselves Christians when they're debating. I'm not saying this is some sort of peculiarity for atheists, but in my experience, when you get them to submit and to one of their, commit, let's say, to one of their statements, it takes this long for them to change. This long. 0 seconds. Hall says data is equivalent to the QWERTY keyboard. You have to know how to use it. Yeah, it's just data, right? It needs to be interpreted. Good point. Wi-Fi Gospel did it for the sun, $5. Thank you. We're at 30 almost. Extanglia, $1. Interesting. Thank you, Extanglia. Okay, listen to him. Now watch.
Experiments are great because you can control
Hold on a
things.
second. I want you all to listen to what he just said. The data post-experiment is no different than the data pre-experiment.
That's not at all what I said. I said the data that is yielded by an experiment is in no meaningful way different than the exact same kind of data from the exact same type of scenario you would set up with the experiment, but it's already occurred.
It's unbelievable. How many times can you contradict yourself in like 15 seconds? He says the data from an experiment is already available to you. Okay, Peterson, if the data is already available to you, why did it require an experiment to know anything more about communicative diseases? Why did we need an experiment? The data was already there. Why did we need to learn about anything through an experiment if the data already existed before the experiment? It's just unbelievable that people will look at this from his side and just think, oh, he curb stomped you. This is an embarrassment, dude. Okay, so here's the thing. The question isn't whether or not you call the results and information you gain from an experiment data. That's not what we're talking about, right? We're talking about whether or not pure data without an experiment. He knows he's done. Experiment can give you a likelihood cause. And I'm saying no, and you're saying yes.
That's because you're wrong. I can explain it to you.
Wow.
I can explain it to you.
Can you develop a theory? Can you develop a look, let's do it again. There's a ship that comes in and they're sick. There's a ship that comes in that's not sick. We look at the contents of the ship. We see the one ship that's not sick has all of this stuff, right? Vitamin C, preservation. The other one doesn't. We make a correlation. We go, this is pure data right here. We can actually work with this data, right? I'm asking a different question. Can you develop a scientific theory of what causes the condition, illness? So see, how do you not see this as a cope? This emotional performance he's doing? It's a type of rhetoric, by the way. It's emotive rhetoric. I can do it. I can roll my eyes and I do it. But you have to know what it is, right? He's doing this, but the thing is he doesn't have a strong position. He's like, you should only do this if you're in the winning. If you're already winning, you can do this. You have an allowance. You have a performative allowance. You know, look at your favorite debaters. Like, do you think someone like Andrew Wilson could be as performative as he is if he wasn't winning? That wouldn't work. You can't do that. Peterson, you have to be winning to do a performance. You didn't earn the performance without doing an experiment.
Yes.
So why does science need experiment then?
Okay, let me try to bridge the divide that we have here. I think how this originally started was you were trying to get me to tell you how could you get data to support it without the experiment. Now, two ships come in. We make an observation about this ship has a bunch of scurvy, this doesn't. We look at what kind of foods the one ship had. We look at the kind of foods the other ship had. We build a hypothesis that says it's due to these vegetables and fruits or whatever. We don't have to run an experiment to get data that confirms that, because we could literally just watch every single ship that comes in after that point, and we have nothing to do with the way it's set up.
I just want you guys to hear that. I almost want to put it on slow motion so you guys hear what he's saying with the sounds that are words coming out of his mouth that I can't believe he's saying, but we're going to listen to it one more time. Under the canopy, $10. Google John Ioannidis, why most published research findings are false. Basically, it's a coin flip whether or not the published article you're reading is even true. Oh, I believe it. I believe it. Okay, watch what Peterson says. This is why this is a memorable debate. It's these statements right here that make him that really just collapse everything he's standing on.
It's due to these vegetables and fruits or whatever. We don't have to run an experiment to get data that confirms that, because we could literally just watch every single ship that comes in after that point, and we have nothing to do with the way it's set up. Those kinds of things are sometimes called natural experiments. So you can do all of that without setting up, like in a lab or whatever, the conditions for it. Now, what I would say is,
hold on. No, don't filibuster. Don't filibuster.
Well, no, I was actually going to try to agree with you.
No, this is okay. Okay, go ahead. I'll let you just good faith. Go ahead.
I will absolutely agree that ideally you would want experiments, like controlled experiments or whatever, because they eliminate a lot of.
John Yates says watching more ships is the experiment. No. Watching more ships is an observation. Observations are not experiments, John Yates. So if he just said, this is what he just said, there's ships that come in and there's a correlation between the ships that have XYZ on them causing and also having scurvy, and there's ships that don't have that, that don't cause scurvy and whatever, right? You're assuming a correlation. That's the observation. The hypothesis asks a more direct question. Well, how do we know which of the things on this boat is actually causing this phenomenon? Peterson says you don't need that. You just watch more things. You just watch more things. That's it. You watch more things. No, that's not. That's more of an observation.
External variables that allow you to laser focus on what you think is happening.
Okay. And what you think is happening is called the hypothesis. The way to test whether or not what you think is happening is called an experiment. How are you this way? Why are you this way? Okay, I'll ask a question. Let's say we didn't know what caused.
Again, I bring up that, like, if that's the case, and yeah, I guess, like, if you can do natural experiments, fine, but then why are people always yelling at other people? No, you need to yell, you need to look at the science, you need to look at the data, you need to look at the scientists and stuff. Like, why are they always appealing to like an authority then, if we could just notice these natural experiments? So if we notice something, say during the COVID times or something, when we say, when we started introducing the jab, and then there were young people, young healthy people that were just
based on that, not to get too into it, but yeah, Cool is right. If the tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist is actually just doing natural science, according to him, he's just observing the correlation between, 20-year-olds having heart issues at a rate that we've never seen possible, that correlates to a certain type of intake of a certain type of thing through a certain type of needle. That's all the science you need. They're not anti-science. They're actually doing the exact thing Peterson's doing with the scurvy. Exactly. Austin Carter, $10. Hey, Jimbob, sorry for the late to the stream. Sorry to derail, but have you heard Kent Hovind's arguments against evolution? Any thoughts? Kent Hovind is correct about some of his, like, rigor in like, when he talks about kinds of things. He's right to say we've never observed kinds of things come from not its kind, but the evolution proponent says, no, there's more time. We're not saying that kinds of things in the time they exist turn into different things, right? That's their view. But the problem with Ken Hovind is like, he has to at least grant, he doesn't grant them that. He says, he needs to say, hey, okay, fine. You don't assume that a kind of thing eventually becomes another thing in its lifetime. A clade doesn't become another, a different clade. It dies out as the clade it is. But they're still trapped, because if a clade never becomes another clade and it dies out the clade that it is, for instance, humans as we are, we will die out in the category of humans that we are. Well, if that's the case, you still need to distinguish and make an arbitrary branch from that clade. So you can't tell me when that happens. None of them can. So I don't know if Kent, I haven't watched enough of Kent to know if he gets into this, but he stays pretty rhetorical.
Just dropping dead from heart failure at the young age, like very young age.
Scurvy, and there was a grant out with 2 scientists.
Okay, watch. This is the part. This is the killer part, right?
The experiment for that reason, you know? Wouldn't it be best to do that?
Scurvy, and there was a grant out with 2 scientists, right? If one scientist was you and one scientist was me, right? And there was a reward for who can develop the scientific theory of what causes scurvy, would you go ahead and present just a correlative argument of the data between ships, what they have and what they don't have, and one clearly correlates to the sickness and one doesn't? Or I do an experiment introducing oranges, introducing and removing oranges and food preservation technology, and I repeat that over and over again. Who's going to get the second grant, me or you?
I don't know.
He doesn't know. He doesn't know. If there's 2 scientists and they're studying scurvy and there's a grant out for who's going to come up with the better theory for what causes scurvy, the one that does an experiment in a controlled environment introducing the independent variable and its results, or the one that doesn't do that, I ask him who's going to get the second grant. He says, I don't know. Unfreaking believable. And I'm the one who's curb stomped in this? No, this is insane. Haul $5, according to Peterson. How did they even do any science before there was a white lab coat? Yeah, I mean, no, according to him, they were just always doing science. You know what it is? You just observe things. You know what I mean? You just observe. Honestly, there are people who studied astronomy before astronomy existed as a type of theoretical science. And they looked to the sky and they saw the movements of things, right? And because they were accurate in their prediction of the movements of the stars, and they said it was caused by also rain dancing. Rain dancing causes a lot of things here, let's face it. Rain dancing causes so many things. Because they were able to predict the movement of the stars and the positions of the stars over the course of 10 years through some sort of tradition of rain dancing, because it correlated with rain dancing, that's what caused it. They didn't need to do an experiment. They just caused the position and the movements of the stars. You know why? Because the observation correlates to the rain dancing. You know what I mean? No experiment needed. But that's a kill. This is a kill shot. And if you guys are debating this formally or with friends or whatever, this is a really good scenario. You present grant money as a hypothetical between 2 supposed scientists, and you ask them this question. I'll just play it one more time, just in case you Peterson simps didn't hear it in the chat. I just want you to know what I just asked him and what he just said.
There is no outside of that.
I'm not right. I agree with you. That's what I'm understanding why this is a.
Because what I'm.
Damn it! I hate buttons. Hold on, let me just find the place.
You're not producing the data yourself. You're not doing.
You all to listen to what he just said. What we're talking about, right? Data, right?
Without
To yell, you need to look at. It could be
scurvy, and there was a grant out with 2 scientists, right? If one scientist was you and one scientist was me, right? And there was a reward for who can develop the scientific theory of what causes scurvy. Would you go ahead and present just a correlative argument of the data between ships, what they have and what they don't have, and one clearly correlates to the sickness and one doesn't? Or I do an experiment introducing oranges, introducing and removing oranges and food preservation technology, and I repeat that over and over again. Who's going to get the second grant, me or you?
I don't know.
I am. Why? Because I developed a scientific theory using an experiment, and you didn't develop a scientific theory, and you just merely made a correlative assumption. The difference between a correlative assumption or...
Gorilla Biscuits, does it bug you to hear the sound of your own voice? Yes.
Well, let's call it a hypothesis.
When I hear my own voice, I want to exterminate myself and everyone who looks like me.
And another hypothesis is the only arbiter for who's correct in their hypothesis is an experiment.
Jimbob, the problem there is you and I are going to have the same data. It's just that you obtained your data in a different way.
Unbelievable, bro. This is just so wild. And these are the science communicators online. According to Peterson, it's established through this debate that there's no difference between the data between pre-experimental correlative analysis and a post-experimental analysis of causation. No difference. It's totally arbitrary when the grant money goes out. Oh, this guy did an experiment with rigor, introducing independent variables in a controlled environment to determine what causes this. Oh, okay. Should we go with him? And the other scientist is like, well, there's this other guy who just does correlation and he just examines the data and makes shit up. It doesn't matter. Can you, like, given that that's the fact, and there's a political hue to science now, there always is. Imagine Peterson is the one giving grant money. Just imagine that. Like, let's say there's a disease that you could actually remedy, and the grant money is up in the air, $1 million grant money, right? And there's one group of scientists studying the cause of the disease so they can intervene with the cause of the disease or redirect the cause of the disease. And then there's Peterson's group or another group of people that are just looking at the disease being caused over and over again. And they just imagine, like, they're just like, oh, I'm just imagining what's causing it. And then there's $1 million, and Peterson is the grant guarantor. And he's like, it doesn't matter, flip a coin, he's saying. Flip a coin. Unbelievable, dude. $5, Thomas. Science is when you assume you know the cause of an event and then find more events so you can say that you know the cause. Induction wouldn't lie. Can't tell if you're being sarcastic there. Yeah, I think you're being sarcastic.
I'm going to have data that says if they eat fruits and vegetables, they don't get scurvy, and so will you.
Thanks for the raid.
But his would actually be proven correct. Yours would have still just been kind of some correlation theory.
Right.
Where Jimbob would have actually had it proven correct. Because even though if you would have had the same data, like you could have still had your theory like, well, it's because this ship had the fruits and vegetables. Mm-hmm. And Jimbob could have done the experiment and came out with it and said, oh, actually it wasn't the vegetables. It was actually, I don't know, something else. Some kind of different factor in there.
Right.
So even though all it's doing is just, he would have just been confirming your data, but that's about it. But there is a very good chance your data could have been wrong.
Oh, you look, the same data that's happening. For instance, let's say, I mean, I couldn't think of a more simple example than this, but I'm going to have to try to think of an even simpler causal example.
What is he giggling about? Like, this is the total destruction of his entire paradigm, and he's giggling. This is a cope giggle.
Say poison, okay? Let's say someone's poisoned.
This is where it gets really bad for him. I forgot about this, actually. I'm remembering this part.
We don't know what caused it. What's the poison, right? You say, well, there's a bunch of poison in this room that's kind of toxic, so it's probably that caused it. And I go, well, there's a variation of poisons here that may have caused it. And you go, yeah, there might be a variation of poisons that caused the death of this person consuming it. You're saying to develop a scientific theory, you don't actually need to introduce the poisons and test which one causes the kind of condition or death. You can just assume, because there's poisons around, that your scientific theory is pure data. There's poisons, and maybe he ingested poisons, right? That's all you're saying, right? We have access to the same data. The problem with your pseudoscience is that the only way to develop a scientific theory, right? Let's look.
Totally pseudoscience. Like, you are the spitting image of pseudoscience. You were made in the image of pseudoscience. Jason McGinney, $5. He keeps saying the data says. Data says nothing. He still doesn't understand that the data doesn't say anything without interpretation. They don't understand. Like I said, Jason, they are sola scripturis, but for data. That's exactly the problem. Same problem. Different field.
Look, I'll make it simpler. I choose one poison and you choose another. They're both in the room, right? Peterson goes with this one and I go with this one. I say, oh shit, Peterson, we have competing hypotheses. How are we going to develop a scientific theory of which of the poisons killed this person, right? Can you imagine the coroners taking...
Yeah, imagine a toxic... What do you call it? A toxicologist? Is that what it's called? He takes Peterson's approach. They bring in the autopsy, the body, the cadaver, and they're like, please tell me what caused this. It's our family wants completion, right? And Peterson is the toxicologist, and he's all, well, what was in the room? Was there poison in the room? Yeah, maybe. Yeah, there's a couple things in the room. He's all, well, it's probably one of those things. Really? Yeah, can we get to the bottom of it? Because, I mean, it might actually tie us to a murder if it was a murder scene. Well, who else was in the room? Oh, there's like 3 people in the room who have access to this toxin. Well, if it was a murder, it's probably one of them. Can we get this all done? I got lunch at 2.
And at Peterson's approach to science, can you imagine what that would look like? They don't need to do a scientific experiment to investigate what causes.
In the 1800s. Like, literally what you're talking about, Jon Snow in London in the 1800s did this. He was noticing cholera outbreaks, and what he did was he mapped all the city's wells, and then he mapped where, like, human waste was being dumped, and then he was able to conclude, he thought that it was caused by the human waste, and then he mapped out the locations of all the wells in London, and then the locations of where the human waste was being dumped, and he found, look, the cholera outbreaks are happening in these specific spots,
that's
and
correlated
they're not happening in these other spots.
That's correlated.
You have to know that feces causes this thing. You idiot. The giggle was stupidity flowing over. He thought that He thought of totally. He thought of
of data. That's
now,
great and useful.
What you could do,
we agree.
What you could do from that point to advance the theory is say, okay, well, why? What causes cholera?
That's not a theory, dude. That is a hypothesis, you retard. Even in his Jon Snow or historical reference, Jon Snow, you know nothing, Jon Snow, is looking at a phenomenon and he's going, oh, there's a correlation here. That's actually the question, actually. That's the beginning of the scientific method. Good job. You're at step 2, Peterson. Unbelievable, bro. It's just the stupidity. He shouldn't vote.
Cholera. Yeah, well, I think that it's not just poop, it's bacteria in the poop.
That's
so
right.
You can advance
the
theory that way. Yeah.
Well,
no,
you're
that's pretending that
yet.
you can't.
No, that's not the theory. That's the hypothesis.
Get the same kind of data.
Stop.
Yeah, I stopped.
You just posited the hypothesis. You said advance the theory. No, you don't. You're basically saying you can get a scientific theory without doing comparing and arbitrating between the two hypotheses.
He's saying that a hypothesis is the scientific theory. That's what he just said. He doesn't even know that he just said it. That's the sad part.
Okay, again. Yeah. Eric, we're at a party. It's a murder mystery.
He said it.
There's a death. Peterson says, dude, that shrimp has poison in it. And I go, dude, this other thing, there's a poison bottle right here with a.
Anyway, I like seeing Peterson get all
pricker, right. And you go, well, I think the shrimp caused the death, and I go, I think this poison caused the death, right? So the question is, right? Question is, how are we going to arbitrate between your hypothesis, the shrimp caused it, and my hypothesis if we have the same data? There's data. There's shrimp. There's this. There's a dead person. How are we going to arbitrate between the two competing hypotheses?
You could, in real time, have different groups of people eat the shrimp and then collect data.
That's called an experiment! Chad McDonald, you wrecked him so bad, you literally turned him into a science denier. He is a science denier. What's an example of a successful usage of the scientific method? Scurvy. Scurvy is, or ingesting certain metals. Poison is a pretty good one in general. So you could definitely control, experiment introducing all sorts of metals into bodies, whether it's a rat or a monkey or a fish or a pig snake or a human. In fact, murderers who use poison, like cyanide, are doing science in a sense. They're doing the experiment part for you. You know what I mean? So the murderers who use poison are in fact scientists, because they're starting with an observation, death is possible. And then their hypothesis is whether or not this thing, if it's ingested or injected or whatever, can cause the death. And then what they do is they go out to clubs with liquid cyanide and they put it in people's beers and it causes death. And they're like, where's my grant, bitch? Stanglia, thank you so much for the 10. We're at 11 to the goal. Thank you so much, you guys. Okay, so listen to dumbass Peterson. No offense, I kind of like the guy, honestly, but watch what he literally proves my point, and this is he concedes the debate. For all you pig snake atheists, pseudoscientists, Peterson lovers, listen to what he says right now.
You could, in real time, have different groups of people eat the shrimp and then collect data that you could collect.
Is that a scientific experiment?
You could collect data in the present.
Is that hold on?
Or you could get the exact same kind of data by looking at events like this that have already occurred.
Dude, what you just said is feed the rest of the group different things. I agree. The two maniacal scientists. Hold on. How else? No. You just said the proper way. Introduce the variable X shrimp and variable X1 poison, inject people with it, and then that's an experiment.
Yeah.
And then you could tell what happened, right? I'm saying, how would you know, other than doing that, how would you know what caused the death?
Again, you could look at, it's kind of weird to call it a historical record in this case, but we could look at we
could look at other historical parties where there was shrimp and poison and ask the same question historically, what caused those deaths? I mean, this is so retarded.
Left, and let's try to keep it all on topic.
This literally does happen. I mean, we're seeing it with outbreaks of avian influenza now, or like with the E. coli outbreak with...
You have to know what E. coli does to the body, dude.
McDonald's, we already know that E. coli causes food poisoning, but it's...
How do we know that, Peterson? How do we know? We already know that E. coli causes food poisoning. Oh, really? How did you know that?
Was it from the lettuce? Or actually, it was from the onions for McDonald's.
Oh, really? It wasn't the lettuce. It was the onions. I wonder, how did we determine that other than a scientific experiment, you dummy? What is wrong with you? Your dad should be embarrassed.
Well, let's track down the onions. Let's track down the farm. Let's track down the distribution. Let's look at the cases of people getting sick around the world. We're not performing an experiment, but we're...
How did he conclude it was the onions and not the lettuce?
confirming our idea there nonetheless.
Look.
Experiments are great. It's not the only way.
I didn't ask about what you think confirms, because there's two different hypotheses that correlate with the data accurately and accurately predict. If the fact of the matter is two competing hypotheses could both correlatively predict things, we're asking a different question in natural science. You said that E. coli, we know E. coli causes this. Well, that's interesting, because that's a claim of natural science, that E. coli causes this type of sickness, right? We wouldn't know that unless we isolated E. coli and introduced it into bodies to see what it caused to do. Now, if there's a whole shit ton of food, and it turns out that people are eating all sorts of food, and lettuce is one.
Jim, this is disgusting, being totally honest. What do you mean? That's not an argument, Duck. What's disgusting about completely wrecking someone's stupidity? What are you talking about? What's disgusting? What are you talking about, Duck? Are you listening to what he just said? Duck, you retard.
One of those foods. We have to determine which food correlates to the sickness. Now, with higher resolution, we look at the lettuce and we go, oh shit, it's nothing about the lettuce. There's actually something on the lettuce, comes from feces. It's causing this. Let's say we didn't know what E. coli was, but we only knew that lettuce seemed to be the correlative agent here. Well, the only way you can develop a scientific theory in regards to the data you have is to investigate what it is that's actually entering the body, introduce it to the body, remove it from the body with two sample sets, do a scientific experiment, and then see what happens. Is it null? Does it verify your hunch that this little microscopic piece of shit went into someone's stomach and caused all this brutality internally? Yes, you can actually introduce it. That's the problem. To tie it back to evolution, observation is fossils in the past look like fossils in the future, or not even fossils. Looks like something in the past. They have similar traits, right? Yeah. I ask, what causes this? Peterson says common descent causes this. I say, interesting. How do you introduce common descent and remove it such you know that it's causal to this phenomenon? He says, you can't do that. That's a concession that you can't introduce and remove common descent.
Well, you can't you can't remove it because you can't change the past.
If you can't take it, the past, dude, the past is your independent variable. Your past is your independent variable.
The scientific method, then.
Yes, you can.
Hypothesis, please.
We do evolutionary experiments today.
Yeah. I didn't ask what you think we do. I'm asking you specifically about this observation and your. Dude,
what kind of
listen to me.
The only thing is, I wish Jimbob would have asked him, like, well, what are these experiments necessarily? That's what I would have liked to have known. Like, oh, okay, well then what kind of experiments do they do then on evolution?
Yeah, I could have asked him that. I could have said, good, cool, name one, because the inability to introduce common descent, which is a narrative, that's a philosophy. That's not a thing you have a handle over. You can't pick it up and put it somewhere. Common descent. Do you deny that I used to be a flamingo? Yes.
Again, like, what kind of method do they use to test? Like, oh, okay, these fossils we found over here seem to be a descendant of these fossils.
What is he saying? Duck is saying this is getting degenerate. You don't have a standard for degenerate. And what are you talking about, Duck? We're literally talking rigorously about the scientific method with examples. In this case was scurvy, and now it's two different poisons. What are you saying, Duck? What kind of drugs are you on, dude? $5. They had to test for E. coli, aka the experiment, to prove it was E. coli. Yeah, from a certain farms and not other ones. Yeah, not the onions. Yeah. It's amazing, Hall, that he actually appealed to E. coli and didn't understand the irony he was in, that you couldn't appeal to E. coli and name it a thing that causes anything without isolating it and introducing it. Otherwise, you could have found any particle on a lettuce and on the onion. It just happened to be E. coli randomly? No, you selected E. coli. In fact, you had to already know what E. coli did to the body to go look for it on lettuce or onions. These are the people teaching our children.
Of here, and so let's test it out. And also, how would they know? So let's if I find like a human skeleton bone, and then I find I don't know, an elephant bone, bones or something. How would I know that? Oh, I can't make an hypothesis. Hey, this human bone evolved from these elephant bones up here. Like how would you know not to make that hypothesis?
You'd like to call in?
Or even how would you know to make that hypothesis?
Duck, what do you want to call in about, Duck? You tell me. What do you want to call? What do you want to try to talk to me about, Duck? What is it?
Hypothesis. And how would you test it either
quack? You quack
way? Like, do you understand what I'm saying? Because evolution proposes that we evolved from something else. So how do we come to that conclusion if we see two different types of skeletal bones?
Yeah. Especially considering that there are things that look like other things that don't come from each other. What we're looking at is phenotype, which boils down to function. All you're saying is that this animal and its population developed from the evolutionary view a similar function. Doesn't follow that they're the same things. That's like saying, like, well, animals all consume some type of external source of energy in some type of food or whatever, right? And see that's a similarity. Therefore, they are related to each other in this type of way because they all have some ability to process something and turn it into energy. What? That doesn't follow either, man.
Observation.
A duck is a mascus. I actually believe that. You're being like, you might be being like hyperbolic, but I do believe it.
Again, there's a thing in the past that looks like a thing in the present. They look similar. The question is, what causes them to look similar? You say,
maybe you can mention one of your subs threatening to kill. I don't advocate for that. If someone, and my own mods know, if there's a direct threat of violence, that person gets banned, Duck. So I don't know what you're talking about. I don't have any toleration for physical threats or threatening death, but you're kind of a softie, so it's hard to know what was said. So I don't know, you're blaming me for what other people said. If someone said that and the mods caught it, that person would be, the comment would at least be deleted. So I don't know what you're saying.
Say a common descent.
Yep. Now, if you're going to call in and cry about threats in the chat, I'm not going to talk to you.
That's like a category, right? A common descent. This occurs, okay? So how do you introduce common descent and produce the phenomenon, remove common descent, and see if the phenomenon's still there?
1 minute left.
So really all you're saying is we can't make the course of history.
I asked you a question. This is cross-examination. Oh, don't tell me what I'm saying. I asked you a direct question. How do you introduce common descent and then remove it to know that it's causing the Y phenomenon?
The idea that because we can't rerun the course of history means that that evolution can't be like a scientific theory.
This is evading and obfuscation. Okay.
Evading. I didn't ask for a meta. I didn't ask for a meta. I did not ask what you think is stupid. I asked you if you're saying in natural science that common descent causes the Y phenomenon. I ask you a scientific question. How do you introduce the independent variable common descent into a situation and remove it so you know that it's causing the phenomenon of similarities? Just say you can't answer it and go to a new hypothesis, dude. Bite the bullet.
No, well, we could confirm it in different ways. We could test the genetics of archosaurs and birds today, and then we could. Yeah, I'm addressing this thing here. So
the answer is you can't. You can't. You have to develop a new story narrative about something that happened, but you can't. I demonstrated you can't. There's no way you could look at this exchange with Peterson or the last guy and come to the conclusion that they have a justified scientific hypothesis or a theory for what causes X. They can't. They can't do it. They know it. They need deep time and some view of the past that they imagine in their head happened, and they say, well, with time it happens. No. This is all you need to do, guys. You just ask the evolution proponent to start with any hypothesis they want. Any hypothesis, or sorry, any observation. Could be anything. Changes in allele frequency. They could observe E. coli reacting to alcohol. Remember that theory? You guys remember that guy called in? That's a theory about alcohol's effect on one particular thing. That has nothing to do with evolution. Alcohol causes carnivorians to branch off into lions. Are you kidding me? Or wolves or whatever the hell. It's like so insane, dude. $5. If you came on and said humans require oxygen, Duck would want to disagree. Yeah, he would disagree about it. What do you want to talk about, Duck? Tell me. Don't complain about my chat. Don't come on crying. I don't have any biddies for you. I don't have a bottle. I don't have any milk in my boobs to give you. Don't come on here and say, you're chatting me. Stop crying. Should have been bullied. 43 of 50, y'all. Let's get 7 more super chats for the goal. Thank you so much. Probably move on to something else. I don't know what else he says here.
So we could confirm it in the present by testing the genetics of archosaurs living today and birds living today, because that is
with the genetics of something we don't have access to the genetics of. Amazing work. Duck wants to say hi, but he needs to use 1,000. He just needs a hug, dude.
Data that
Poor
would
guy.
be predicted by common descent. And
what's your baba? You need your baba? Do boo boo boo? Do with the boo boo ducky? Do with the boo with the wubba ducky in the bathtub? Do ducky with the double bucky in the bathtub? Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
And then we find it.
Ducky Wookie needs his blanket. Tickle, tickle, tickle.
So anyways, we're out of time, but
yeah, we are. Thank you, Murder the Media, $5. Appreciate you.
My question is, why is it just a theory then? Like, if we're doing these experiments,
it's not even a theory
today, how come it hasn't been proven yet? How come it's just a theory? And so Jimbob is trying to stick to the scientific method. See, what's funny is that Jimbob is actually kind of switching things around a little bit. He's trying to turn it on them. Because it's like whenever we come on here and we argue for God and the existence of God and such, they're always like, well, prove it then. Show me God exists. Show me that picture of God. Have God come down here and wave hi into the camera for us. Have him reveal himself to us.
Yeah.
Or else he isn't real. And so, well, and then they always appeal to the science. Oh, it's the science. The science is the thing we can trust. That's the arbiter of truth and all these things. So Jimbob is actually switching it back to them, and he's saying, listen, with evolution, if evolution true, can you run it through the scientific method? He is now using science as the ultimate, as the arbiter of.
I am being the science lover here. I'm the lover of science.